Nice. Good afternoon. I'll just start with an introduction. My name is Jobin, and I basically work with 10 Protocol, and I work in the foundation as the chair for the board, serving in the foundation. We basically build programmable privacy solutions using T's, and yeah, that's it. I'll share it. The opportunity to my counterpart, Harsh.
Hello everyone, my name is Harsh. I work at Aztec Labs. Aztec is a stage 2 privacy first roll up where like privacy is a first class citizen. And yeah, like that's my NFT. I never used to look like it, so I've been trying to grow my hair so that I look like it a little bit. But yeah, that's about me. I really enjoy privacy. I started with privacy as my first thing in crypto, and then I did a lot of scaling research later on, and then I'm back here. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, plus one on that hairstyle because I have seen Harsh almost like 8 years back. I don't know. Harsh might not remember me, but used to be in Hack Club and
Oh
I used to be in
yeah.
a Hack Club, and I do definitely remember the hairstyle was a lot different. So good work on that. So yeah, the topic for this panel basically is about privacy, but it starts with what Web3 has offered us, and that is transparency. So, is transparency a problem? That's the first thing we want to discuss. And it's a panel, two-sided one, so it might get biased. And I believe the stage is open to you guys to poke in and ask questions too, so feel free to engage. So I'll give you the opportunity first, Harsh, to say whether transparency is actually a problem in Web3, or how would you define it?
Yeah, actually, it took me a long time to, like understand that it is, because if you look at like how crypto got started, it was decently anonymous back then. Because, like, let's say if you never leave the cyber realm and all your transactions are in Bitcoin, and whatever are the real world side effects of it aren't visible to anyone, you could by default say, unless you attach like some sort of a naming service to it, that it felt pretty private to people, and people actually thought that holding Bitcoin is, like their way to hedge against whatever is the current, let's say, fiat system, and that's their store of value, and like they keep it, and only they know it, and stuff like that. But then one day, like I actually thought about myself that I have harshbajpayee.eth on my Twitter, and then I went and I searched about it, and then I saw, okay, like I can see most of my transaction, and then I went to a crypto payroll company, and I then put the address where I got the money from, and I was like, oh, I can see everyone's transactions, and now I know how much volume they are doing and how much are they paying everyone. So I now have an idea of how much like salary dispersion is happening through them, and that's when it slowly started clicking me that it's a big problem. It's, let's say, not a big problem if you live in a geography, or let's say in a country where things are just running fine. Like the government is really nice, things are efficient, you don't have a real threat from them. But then there are scenarios like Africa where we have seen that they have specifically targeted people who have used Bitcoin, and they've like tried targeting them. And since all of this is visible, anytime you do any specific transaction on a public blockchain and it has a real world side effect, you're actually leaking metadata about who you are. And once all your data is out there, you do lose a lot of power as an individual. So like I have a sovereign individual thesis. I really like the book. I really think that, like the goal of crypto should be to increase sovereignty of an individual. And I think that doesn't happen in a public blockchain scenario. It's better than cash. Right now, if you hold cash and you transact with it, it has better privacy than Bitcoin or let's say Ethereum. And
Hard cash.
yeah, like you can just take a cash, you can give it to a vada pav person. No one knows that you bought it. And now with public blockchains, I think people who are into mass surveillance would love them because you can just see everything. Like you can see that every micro transaction that I'm doing. So I think that's where I realized that, yeah, like It's a big issue. Like even if you remove all the MEV stuff and everything else, where the institution.
That's just one angle.
Yeah.
MEV is just one angle. There's this big thing that you said on the other side is I believe something that is more problematic.
Yeah, for me, like the sovereignty of an individual going down is something that is very not so good.
So this was supposed to be a fireside chat, but surprisingly, it's gonna feel more like we are going to be very aligned in terms of our views and opinions. So, yeah, that is pretty much my view too. So, the reason I'll tell you is it's been 5-6 years, and it takes time for you to soak in and understand. I mean, 5-6 years, not for the space, sorry, for me. And it takes time for you to soak in and understand the pattern which Harsh said. You do a lot of activity, and when you start doing activities, is when you observe that something is definitely going wrong. It's like when you start going to gym, that is when it starts hurting. So you can't say privacy is not a problem or a transparency is not a problem unless you have spent some time. That is when you understand the gravity of the problem. Okay, so it hit me hard that over time, the metadata that Harsh said compounds to a level, and I would expand on that metadata part, Harsh. That is, the reason I want to expand it is people consider privacy as secrecy. It isn't. That's a very, very old school explanation to say privacy is secrecy. Privacy is way beyond that. And a very simple thing I want to coin for that is IBW. Not India Blockchain Week, I'm sorry. Okay, it's intents, behavior, and wealth. And that's what basically the metadata is. You could expand, Harsh, if you want to add something to the metadata brackets, but I would say metadata usually is intents, behavior, and wealth. So when you start doing a lot of transactions over time, you create enough footprint or enough data points which shows what your intentions usually are when you do a transaction. And that creates a pattern which shows what your usual behavior is. It's basically, if you every time show an intention to purchase particular token when the market goes high or bull or bear, it shows your behavioral pattern that you are probably a particular kind of trader. Okay, and then over the time when you follow this behavior, you start amassing wealth, and which puts you into a particular bracket of being what kind of trader? A whale, somebody who does trading in pennies, and wealth is being leaked out. So what happens is, when you combine intents with behavior with wealth, what I can do is, over 4-5 years, or maybe just even 1 year, slam it to an LLM, I can predict probably your next move, and I can front run it. And that's what basically, I mean, I don't want to get sued, but I hope this doesn't get shared out much. Things like Palantir does. What they do, they understand people's habits, characters, their intentions, behavior, wealth, and they can predict what you are going to do next. They can predict it so well, you can call it supernatural. And you don't realize the gravity of the problem that I can tell you, buddy, the next thing that you're going to do is this. And I can influence you without you even knowing. And it's very simple. I figure out that your wealth is this, your behavior is this, your intent is this, and I can exactly at the time show an ad and influence you, and you would end up buying that. So I basically manipulated you. So this is where it gets scary. And I believe that is why the statement that transparency is a problem and the lack of privacy is also a problem becomes relevant. Is it?
Yeah, I think like another interesting thing that I like recently learned from someone was that I never knew that actually a lot of the things that the Nazi party did came from data that the governments doing census back then never knew would be used for it. So like back then in Europe, a lot of census used to happen of like, and a lot of tax returns used to happen. And they actually used that data to figure out who's like which person is a Jew and which person is not a Jew, right? Back then, no one knew that this data being public could be such a big issue 10 years from now. And I think that's my real big concern with public blockchains, that as AI gets better and better, you can basically go and see everything that everyone has ever do, and specifically target individuals for specific things, like, and a lot of it would be retrospective. Like, you're just leaking a bunch of data right now. 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you just don't know, like, what the implications of it is. And the only reason you are doing it is not by choice. It's like you have no other options. That's like how blockchains have been created.
So basically, you turn yourself into a predictable object because you're leaking out data or metadata.
Yeah, so metadata is bad.
Yes. So, yeah, definitely, I agree with that. And the last statement that Harsh said is something I believe even I've read in the EF research forums. That is, if privacy is an option, that it's because they don't have an option, like people don't have an option. People have to choose privacy, right? It's an option. Because it's an option, it's a problem. The reason I'll tell you is, if you tell me you use VPN, I'm pretty sure why you use it. It gets very obvious. It becomes very suspicious. Because privacy of web is optional and you have to opt in, I can pretty much put you in a bracket of people who usually do. I'm not saying obvious, or like for sure with 100% surety, but I can put you in a bracket of suspicion that you might be somebody who does something shady. Okay, so if I see your phone and you have a VPN, I'm pretty sure you do something nasty. So I'm not saying I'm going to do that in reality, but that is how it looks like when privacy is option. So when Ethereum or any chain out there doesn't have privacy inbuilt, but it's an option and people have to use mixers or other solution, it's pretty obvious that you're doing something nasty and you become a target. Enforcement, feds, people are going to run behind you. And they're going to bother you. Even if you have not done something nasty, at least you would waste a few back and forth conversations with these guys to prove that you're innocent. And you definitely don't want to be in trouble. And that is why privacy shouldn't be an option. Privacy should be inbuilt in Ethereum, or I believe in all chains. And it should not be like incognito mode, which you turn on. It's just respects your privacy by default.
Yeah, like what even scares me a lot these days is like just your ability to travel freely around the world if you are in crypto, because I've been reading more and more of, like people getting basically mocked.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting. If I actually did a lot of transactions from hushpashpay.eth, and if I now actually, that's why I also like hate Twitter's new feature where they actually reveal where you are, right? Like I'm like, and I just use a VPN to make sure that they never get to know, like where I actually am. But I think, yeah, that's like one of my biggest fear. Let's say if all of us are putting our .eth.soul out there on Twitter, and then you're just doing all of it from there, and then you're just putting on Instagram or somewhere else that, like, hey guys, I'm really enjoying this beach in Vietnam. And then someone in Vietnam sees, oh, like, here's my AI agent. It has indexed that this person who has this specific ENS seems to have this much money around with them. And if I go and mock them, I can get that money out of them. So it's already happening. People are being mocked and kidnapped and stuff like that. I heard it recently happened, I guess, in London. Or I don't know where it happened. But yeah, that's the sad part.
Buenos Aires too.
Oh, Buenos Aires, I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm glad I made it safe.
Yeah, so basically you end up becoming a profile. And because you're a profile, you become a target. So definitely you don't want to.
Yeah, it's like imagine you're sitting in a cafe in Bandra and then like you just know every person's bank balance.
Yes.
It's the weirdest feeling ever. And I think right now like no one knows it because let's say if someone sees my ENS, they actually can't connect a lot of dots because it's a lot of manual processing that you'd have to do that.
That changes with AI, right?
Yeah, with AI that changes. With AI, someone can say probably these 30 addresses belong to Harsh. And that's his net worth. And now when I'm sitting in a cafe in Bandra and someone recognizes me a little bit and they do harshbajpai.eth or and just give it to an agent, probably it will index it out and let me know, like that, okay, this is how much this guy is worth. And as long as the other person is a good actor, it's fine. But if it's a bad actor, this could be really troubling. So, yeah.
Definitely. And we are not living in a society where we don't have bad actors. So definitely you're unshielded when you don't have privacy. You're basically vulnerable. Okay, so that was the starting topic. That was the starting point. So now we come to the side where it gets more pragmatic. We talk about techniques or technologies that would make or enable privacy possible on chain. So I believe we don't rage bait each other because it's time when we do some ZK versus T, and I'm pretty aware that Harsh is a prodigy in terms of ZK, Max, and a lot of stuff. And I'm someone who's stubbornly obsessed about T's and usually end up in some bad rage-baited Twitter fights. So I hope that doesn't happen IRL here. So we have two options, Harsh. You can use, I'll try to be as diplomatic as possible, but we have two options, ZK and T. But we do have other options like NPC and FSG. We can come to that later. So, Harsh, where do you think these technologies apply, and to what extent it protects your privacy as a user? Does it protect metadata? Does it protect data? Does it enable verification with privacy? What exactly is it?
Yeah, I think like I've thought a lot about it, and personally, I prefer a pure native ZK approach. That just comes from the fact that.
As rage bait with me.
Oh yeah. I think like so. Basically, first of all, like I'm an Aztec and Zcash maxi, right? Like and the reason why I believe that ZK math is far superior is because it's pure cryptography, and the only trust assumption, like if you're on a Stark-based system, you have like no trust assumption basically. And if you're in a snark-based system, the max assumption you have is like of trusted setup, and that you can like create a very highly confident trusted setup that there's nothing wrong with it. So at least that's the reason why I joined Aztec, because I think there are like few very important properties that a privacy protocol needs to have. Number one, it needs to be censorship resistant. That's why actually being a stage 2 roll up on Ethereum makes sense for Aztec. That's why we actually never launched it at stage 0, stage 1. Like, it has to be uncensorable. No one can come out and basically say that these are the bunch of 5 people running it, and if you stop them, the protocol stops. The moment you have done that, you haven't created like humanity scale infrastructure. So I think like that's number one, that it needs to be like unstoppable. As like we make, say for Zcash as well, like it's unstoppable encrypted money. Similarly, Aztec is unstoppable encrypted compute. And then once you have this layer, then you...
Unencrypted compute.
So encrypted compute.
Encrypted compute.
Yeah.
I'm going to get back.
So yeah, unstoppable, it's an unstoppable encrypted computer, right? And then basically, so that's layer 1, that it's unstoppable. No one can stop it. There's no 5 people or 7 people committee running it, right? You just can't target and get it down. Second is where does the security come from? And if it comes from pure cryptography, is the strongest security you can give to someone. That I have given you a seed phrase, a bunch of keys are derived from it, and as long as you keep them safe, no one knows, as long as you selectively disclose what you own, what you do, and you have the ability to do all of it on your mobile. There's no third-party provider that you rely on for security. Your data leaves nowhere because it's all encrypted, and only you can decrypt and do local ZK proving around it. And I think, that's my approach. I think like if you want to do something, if you want to make a real scale, humanity scale, project, you can't get away without...
Specify what project, because that is where I'm interested. Like the vertical.
So basically like anything like peer-to-peer payments, private OTC swaps, lending markets, anything where like you want a normal average human to have sovereignty and the ability to participate undiscriminated in a financial system is where I think. So that's like why, let's say, people love Ethereum, right? Like that even when the censorship did come from the US, blocks were still produced and OFAC transactions still went in, which proved that it's censorship resistant, and that's why people have high confidence in it. So I think a privacy protocol needs to meet all these benchmarks.
Agree, totally agree. So it's a a very nice way to pitch zero knowledge to people interested in privacy audience. But that is where I want to plug in. I asked Harsh about projects that are willing to include privacy, but what verticals exactly? So he gave some examples. So if you observe, all of them are finance related. Okay, so this is where the thing is, Harsh. ZK or zero knowledge as a privacy tech is really good because you reduce trust assumptions. But then the catch is, it's really good at proving something privately or verifying something privately. It is not really good at executing a logic privately, because in ZK, like examples, I mean, if you observe, everything around ZK is usually finance or proving identity. ZK and Aadhaar, all of this. It doesn't just reveal your identity and proves it that you hold an authentic Aadhaar. So in the same way, everything that you do in ZK mostly circles around this verification or privacy of verification, but doesn't extend in a lot of chains, a lot of projects into privacy of execution. And I mean, there are people who are trying, but there is nothing practically live and pragmatic enough, I believe, which can do at scale Ethereum level execution with privacy. And that is where things like FHE, TEs, and MPCs step in, because they might not be great at proving things, because I mean, there are trust assumptions on hardware, there are scalability problem with FHEs and latency problem with MPCs. But then coming to TEs, you can actually run an entire smart contract inside an enclave or a TE confidentially, and all the data that goes into the contract as an input stays confidential because you're using a TE or a secure enclave. And that means you can have entire Ethereum's code running inside TEs, and you could have a private or confidential EVM available. And that's what we are doing. I mean, at 10, that is what we understood is stage, I'll not use stage one, I will use level one. Level one privacy was about finance, was about wealth. I said IBW, right? In things like Zcash, they hide your finance, they hide your footprint and movement when it comes to money movements. But that is very limiting. What if we want to do beyond that? Example, you want to do something like decentralized health services. Decentralized health services where your patient records are not getting leaked out, but you can book appointments, you can get insurances, and things like that. That becomes possible because execution at scale is possible inside enclaves, and the latency to run these things inside enclaves is very low. So we run at a very high TPS. I mean, I'll not come into the TPS war like usual layer 2s do, but we run sensibly faster, and that is thanks to hardware. But then, yeah, I agree, there are trust assumptions, that is hardware. But what we could pull off because of this is, we can definitely do what ZK does. That is, we can build Zcash. Things like that are already tried and live on our chain. But some interesting things that we were able to build is, so we built something very interesting. I'm somebody who's slightly leaning towards AI in the recent days, all thanks to the hype. So 1 year back, we built something very interesting. That is, we built a Texas Hold'em game, a poker, basically, on chain. And it does everything confidentially. That is, shuffling of deck comes from the entropy derived from enclave. So there is no external VRFs like Chainlink. Okay, so nobody can know where the VRF is coming from, or you can figure out what the VRF is. And then using that, you assign cards. And then the thing is that each player gets secretly assigned their cards, so nobody else can just go and check in Etherscan with your wallet address what cards you hold, or check the event log and figure out what you have been assigned or what moves you are making. So it's a completely confidential Texas Hold'em game. Okay, so this would not have been possible at scale at this speed using something like ZK, probably possible using FHE, but definitely not using ZK. And then what we added on top of it is what you said about the finance aspect. What we did is we added an economic layer on top of that. What we did is we made agents play the game. So we had 6 agents powered by six LLMs playing this on-chain poker against each other, and none of them could see their moves against each other. And they had money, basically their tokens. And interestingly, this games went upwards of 50 hours. One table for 54 hours. Nobody knows what these guys are thinking, what they are playing, but it's verifiable because we were using LLMs powered by Fala. So you could verify using remote attestation that these LLMs are actually not manipulated by humans, trying to say, make this move, throw this card, shuffle. No, it's completely random. And then that is when we understood finance with privacy is good. But finance with privacy plus execution with privacy is where the game changes. Game as in not just this game, any vertical changes, because you make it very potent to build things like decentralized health, decentralized and confidential governance. Like you could have land papers and deeds and all these things happening in India, but nobody gets to know that Harsh has bought a land. It is all thanks to things like these. But yeah, definitely there are trust assumptions, and I have answers to that. But before that, yeah, I have talked enough. Harsh.
But by the way, I don't think you can make Zcash on Ts or on any protocol that works on TE, because the truth of the matter is that if you're a TE protocol, like you can't run a full node even, because like you just, like here's the thing, right? Like you are a TE, basically your protection comes from a guy with a Glock, right?
Yeah.
Basically, there's some guy standing behind a center with a Glock like this, saying that I will not let anything happen, right?
Data center, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, you need, like let's say I'm trusting a TE provider, I am trusting the fact that they are securing against side channel attacks, and
yes.
that's a decent.
That's a good guardrail.
I don't think so. I think like if you are like building censorship resist, like imagine if Ethereum said that Ethereum is secure because there's a guy with a Glock.
It is, but because 2/3 of the nodes, I mean, horror.
Yeah, but they can.
AWS and
But let's say if one day it goes out, like so, you can just bring it up again on normal infrastructure. You know, like it's
Agreed.
not that that's the only way it exists, right? So let's say, for example, what I like is unopinionated protocols like Aztec, like Zcash, which have like it's completely unopinionated. Like there's no, like such hard assumptions about the protocol, or let's say of a specific architecture or something like that. Like the whole Aztec protocol runs on your mobile. You can just, and all the finance use cases you said, like you can actually do it purely ZK, right? Like unless there's private shared state.
But only finance use cases.
No, you can do governance. You can build a DAO on top of it. We have prototypes.
Limited to voting.
Yeah, people
not execution.
What?
Not execution.
Voting is execution.
No, I mean execution of certain logic based on certain inputs, not just like based on votes.
When you are basically.
Example, games.
For example?
Games.
Yeah, we have chess games. And so basically the way Aztec works, or let's say you can design any other ZK protocol, is that you can combine private execution with public execution. So for example, let's say I want to move certain assets, and then I want something else to happen as part of it. So I would firstly privately execute all of that on my mobile. I will create a ZK proof of whatever I did is correct, and then that will go to a public function. And then based upon that, it doesn't know all the private computation I did, like for it, that's hidden, the private state I processed on it. So that's why like when you were saying that basically ZK is about verification, that's not true. Like it's basically proving execution. So you are actually doing private execution, and you are doing it on your mobile phone, and you can run any logic you want with any input, and then you can basically chain it with a public function and you get the same result. So
okay. So that is an interesting shift from the fact that I said, which is ZK is used for verification, but you said that you could do execution on your phone. So then that also adds up one more trust assumption, that is your device probably is not compromised. If your device is compromised, your execution is compromised, and that does leak out things. So it's exactly with what the problem with T's are basically
I
where
think
T's
these
is
are two
complementary.
very different assumptions. Like for example,
There are assumptions.
oh yeah, but I'm saying it's a way better assumption to have than a guy with a Glock, right? So for example, let's say by that logic, the world could be a simulation, right? Like, and everything could be like, and you can just make an assumption. Like I'm just saying that these are the most bare minimum assumptions you can make, that every person on planet have a phone with a GB of RAM, right? Like that's why we do the snark cryptography we have, because it's the only one right now that works on that device specifications, right? Uh, Anyone can run a node. The hardware requirements are low. Anyone can sequence it. We don't even run, like it's basically like completely being run by a decentralized set of validators. We have seen up to 10,000 people sequencing it. Now here's the thing. If I am a person who wants to encrypt my wealth and I'm trying to increase my sovereignty, then I'm trying to like basically protect myself from high power actors. At the end of the day, if all my money is locked in behind a guy with a Glock, who is again the same person that I'm trying to protect myself against, I don't know how much security do I have. For example, you talked about Fala network. So we have a friend who actually did disclose a vulnerability about them, right? Where basically for a long time, I guess you could, like they were using something was wrong. I would have to look again in the report, but basically the thing was that it could actually take false proofs and like basically take it in. So like TEs have historically been shown that they have been compromised. This TE dot fail that happens, and that's why
SGX.fail.
what
SGX.fail.
what
SGX.fail.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Taggable thing.
yeah, SGX, and like a lot of this shit has been compromised as well in the past. But I do think they have a place, and we have prototypes where we are using it, which is like we have specific Aztec wallets that I've experimented with that do control assets in a multisig of diversified TEEs, right? But that's for just convenience. You would never park your serious capital in there. You're just doing it for, let's say, private cross-chain trading stuff or something like that. But I don't think you can call a TE, like a TE protocol could be like something that could have a very institutional use case or something like that. I don't think you would onboard the whole world to it or something like that, because the trust assumptions just don't make sense. It's weaker than Ethereum.
Yep, got it. Yep. So, yeah, your points are valid. So I'll just add one more thing to that aspect. I mean, we were focused actually only on institutions because we figured out institutions need privacy to enter into the market. They're not happy with their big trades being public. So that's where this idea, because we came from a background of one of the biggest chains called as R3 Corda. Our team built that, and that's when we realized this institutional needs, and then we thought of combining it with a public blockchain with privacy. So it's the point that these chains are usually T-based projects being more leaning towards institution is appropriate and valid. Okay, so I'll come to that assumption part where you say there's this guy holding a Glock at a data center because it hosts T's, and then you can trust it with your wealth or your anything basically. So that is because a lot of people are not getting the exposure into T's. T's are not limited to SGX and TDX or the H100s that NVIDIA is building. T's are beyond that. There is a class of T's called as T's being run inside RISC-V. One of the very good hardwares that makes it an open source based Keystone. So you could basically get a Keystone to avoid a guy standing with Glock. You could get a Keystone hardware at home, run a T inside a RISC-V or RISC-V, whatever you call, inside it, and you reduce the trust assumption.
But I can't run the protocol on it, right? Like for example, even my iPhone has, let's say, some sort of an enclave.
It has a secure enclave, T1,
yeah.
T2.
But the thing is that that's different from me custodying my data in a third-party TE, right?
Why can't you do it on a normal enclave that's being run at home? Why do you think so?
Like because if like I could probably verify it, but I don't think I can basically propose blocks through it, because there's a high risk of some side channel attack existing that I could just do to like do anything. That's why like all these TE protocols, I've never seen any one of them who has ever been able to allow anyone to run a validator at home. Because even if you get that stuff, right, you don't have the guy with the Glock,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah. So I think that's the limiting factor. Like enclaves are nice for yourself. Like even let's say I use mobile wallets, right? So let's say probably some of it is relying on it. But yeah, I think like you just because a device at my home can have a TE doesn't mean that you can do like a full blockchain on it, because the core reason why you try to restrict it to certain cloud providers is because there's always this risk of the TE being hacked because of someone having physical access to it. So that's the thing.
So if you consider the threat surface of something being hacked in the near future or any time, I mean, that would even apply to ZKs. I mean, I have read this paper, if I remember, a year back about 144 different vulnerabilities. I am not very much into ZK, but 144 vulnerabilities being found in ZK Snark, just published on, what was it, ARXIV or something like that website. I was reading that paper. So definitely the possibility or the threat surface of a digital or hardware or a cryptographically backed product being hacked exists for
Risk for everything exists.
Everything, yeah. So you can't say that ZK is good because it's bulletproof forever or indefinitely. But I'll come to the other point where you said that an enclave or a keystone, basically. The reason I said keystone is because there is a trust assumption that Intel might be doing something with the silicon which gives them a backdoor into the stuff. So that was one of the biggest things that people were saying about keys. But then your point about side channel attacks also is true. So there is where a very interesting research is happening, whereas the remote attestation concept is being extended, where it finds out that an open source community manages the code or the firmware that runs inside a RISC-V or a RISC-V T running inside Keystone. And this community manages and maintains the code. So the moment they figure out that a side channel attack has happened, what they do is they basically figure out a mitigation for it, patch it, and using remote attestation verify that all the other TEs, all the other TEs haven't reached a position, all the other TEs are also patched and they are producing blocks or doing verifications or doing executions confidentially on the newer patched firmware code. And that is what remote attestation enables. But there is one constraint which basically believes that this malicious activity hasn't propagated into all the nodes of Enclave. That is the only constraint, but definitely the extension of remote attestation into this sphere of verifying that you are using a patched version of an Enclave, and that to a firmware that has been ran and managed and deployed or pushed out, released by open community, makes it far more secure. So you will always be running something that is
How is like trusting a bunch of people that are
open
doing all
community.
of
That is like, good, sorry.
Yeah, like let's say, how is like trusting a bunch of people more secure than just trusting maths, like pure maths and cryptography? For example, like why would I go through all of this and just not prove it on my phone? For example, right now,
Prove it a phone, but you can't do private share states and execution. That's where the limit is, right?
okay, private shared state is a different problem, right? And that's where I do agree that like the moment you do private shared state is where you have to do something like ZK MPC or stuff like that that TESIO is doing, right? Like that's the kind of stuff I like even for that. I would like rather do like provable MPC and accelerate research there. But I think at least right now with Aztec, we have been able to make everything that we wanted to make. And we have like invented new patterns for it as well, while allowing all of it to be provable on your mobile phone, 8 to 10 seconds, like proving times, and the block times are low. And like I think like in an year, half an year on a year, we would be at the same throughput as Ethereum. It's basically Ethereum completely encrypted. Private shared state, I think I like stuff like Archeum, TESIO. That's where I would go for again.
Latency is a problem. Then that's a trouble.
Yeah, but then I think like, so that's something I've been thinking about, right? Let's say if I want to move a piece of land privately, do I really, like right now, it takes days. Now let's say there are two people coming in front of you. One guy is saying that I will give you bulletproof mathematical, let's say, of course, you could make an argument that the cryptography could be wrong, but that's why you hire good cryptographers, right? Like, and you invest in cryptography and people over years to make sure that you actually have really good stuff, right? So yeah, one person is coming here and saying that, hey, you can move this piece of land through me privately. It's gonna take a minute or something like that, but it's all gonna be secure. Your data is in custody of no one. There's basically, as long as Ethereum doesn't go down, there's no way your piece of land never moves. Versus, let's say, then there's this other guy who's saying, hey, I will move it in 0.5 seconds, not 1 minute, right? But then in 0.5 seconds, this protocol has like basically a restriction of it only runs in cloud providers, because there's like no normal person who can run a normal validator node, because it's, let's say, a TEE based one. And let's say, yeah, but it's really fast, right? But then there's this risk of it. The data is technically there, and like it's not completely encrypted. Like, I really don't see why someone would not find that 1 minute option way better than just doing it in what 0.5 second, 1 second. Unless you're building an order book, that's where I see
Club.
value. Yeah, if you are doing an order book, I see value that you would do a TE, right?
Like a dark pool, basically.
Yeah, if you do a dark pool, like, I think TEs are valuable. I think, but there's research going on. There's this company. It starts with Renegade or something like that.
Uh,
They're doing.
yeah, the pink color one. The pink color.
I don't know,
Renegade.
but
Yeah, yes,
yeah.
it's a Renegade. Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing, I guess, some sort of ZK MPC as well, something like that. It's provable multi-party computation through which I guess they make their dark pool. I could be wrong, but that was my understanding last when I read it. So I think there's good research going on it. I am not the guy who has been very deep into it, but I would actually prefer still MPC more, because let's say if you keep pushing the research forward, and if you can scale MPC network to, let's say, even 60 participants or something like that, which we don't know when we're gonna get there at reasonable limits. But if we get there, then they are as good as any Cosmos blockchain out there, because most Tendermint-based blockchains already have these many validators. So yeah, that's my thing. Like, pure maths for any normal human out there, you can do 70% of whatever you want, 80% of all finance privately with it. For the rest 10, 20, which requires private shared state, or that requires really high speed finance, yeah, probably something like MPC or TE makes sense.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I'll not stretch it any further because it's been getting very long. So, I mean, we can go on and on about this argument about ZKTEs or FHEs or MPCs, but I'll just wind that part very diplomatically. That is, there is no silver bullet, basically, and I believe that these technologies needs to be used based on what product you're building. I said IBW, intense behavior and wealth, right? So if you fear that your product leaks out wealth, basically that is, what do you say, pointing towards finance. ZK is absolute good option with there. And when you're building something where there's a lot of execution happening and it leaks out your intent, example, institutional trades, where the intent of making a big move or trade, getting out to public, becomes a huge problem. That is where T's can be super good, and there for them time matters a lot and speed matters a lot. And yeah, and so, like MPC, FHE, you can apply these based on the use cases you are building. That is my take, rather than being a maxi on anything. I was a maxi, a TE maxi, like 2 years back, but then over the time I just like got humbled, understanding the pros and cons of each and every product, and I figured out there is no panacea, basically. None of these technologies can solve 100% at the current state. Probably the research, like Harsh said, if the research proceeds, you might find one, like consolidation of these PETs ending up with one solution that is all of this. But you had a statement where you said you could proceed this research of MPC further to get a solution which does as good as this. You could also do the same with Ts, where we reach a situation where we have hardware that is very less likely to be susceptible to a side channel attack. Okay, yeah, that's the point. So coming to the last and final topic, because we have talked about why privacy matters, how you can enable privacy, But the final thing, when you enable privacy, Harsh, the problem that arises is, I think we might be overrunning. Yeah, so we'll just take a minute, okay? Is compliance. Okay, compliance is a huge pain in the dash, okay? So, whenever you introduce something like privacy, you end up either as a creator in jail, like a Tornado Cash guy, or you always get bothered by feds or authorities. So how do you, and then another problem is, privacy becomes a crime for a lot of people because they utilize this freedom to do a lot of nasty stuff. So how do you balance crime with privacy and compliance with privacy, Harsh?
Yeah, so I think like, first of all, like before I leave, and we're already short on time, any blockchain that can custody your data in any form is a tool for mass surveillance. If they have your data, they will sell it to a government, they will sell it to law enforcement or whatever it is, so yeah, like never use them. And you can go on the internet and figure out which are these privacy protocols. That being said, on the compliance stuff, I think just do selective disclosure. So for example, we are doing internal research and prototypes at Aztec, where you can actually do a ZK proof more client side saying that I never interacted with an address that I was never supposed to interact with. And and I basically, never did anything wrong. You don't have to go and see everyone's all data to know that. You can just do a local client-side proof and that's all. I guess one last part would be that you don't have to, basically, the fact that you can move money doesn't enable, that's my personal opinion, by the way, doesn't enable crime. Because by that logic, if the reason why bad actors are able to do bad act is because they can move money through a system, by that logic, we should stop making cars because they also use cars. We should stop all sorts of messaging. We should also stop making books because they read books and they acquire knowledge through it, right? And there's no end to it. So I think, yeah, that's the law enforcement's part to figure out. Crime doesn't happen because people are able to use certain tools, because then you have to compromise all of them, right? The point is that you can't compromise the privacy of billions of people under this. Like, we have to come up with more practical solutions like selective disclosure, where you can just prove that you're not guilty without revealing all of this data.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I'll just wind this up. We also were working on very similar concept like selective disclosure called as timed revelation, where the DAO votes basically to reveal a particular part if somebody demands an audit and prove that they are not wrong. But I agree with the point of not hoarding the data, because hoarding the data then makes you vulnerable at any point. Like, they'll just bash in your house, get hold of all the people and get the data out. So agree on that part. Harsh, it was awesome to talk with you about these, and I hope you guys got some idea of what privacy in Ethereum means and what are the things. And the final take from my side, I will give you also a chance for that, is that apply your filter, and the filter would be IBW when you are building something. Figure out if it leaks out intent, behavior, wealth, apply whatever solutions out there are, and build private things. Yeah, good.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I guess this was good. Like,
yes.
The questions were nice, and you're like definitely were the right person to do this with. I think, I will just end it with trust maths, trust cryptography. And I'm gonna do a session in an hour, like we're just gonna talk for 10, it's a meetup, like it's not even I'm gonna be talking about it. There will be some pizza, and I will be talking about why you should do privacy. So if you wanna know more, just join me there and let's have some pizza.
I'm gonna come for pizza.
Yeah, sure, man. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.